Welcome, welcome. So this is Brooke and Carly, and today we have Lilian with us. Lilian is a PR coach and publicist, and you can check out her services on inretrospectwritingservices.com, and you can hire her if you like what she has to say today. So our goal is to equip you with the tools necessary to get published and be successful. And we really think that having more conversations about PR will help you get there. And we think Lilian is the perfect person to talk about this today. So Lilian, let's get started. What is PR, and how do you think it would help or benefit writers to know more about it?
PR, in a nutshell, is the most cost-effective way to build unbiased third-party credibility in the industry. And I'll go into that a little bit about what I mean by that. When you're doing other forms of marketing, your social media, your email marketing, your online advertising, anything having to do with your website, that's coming from you, right? You, the author, or you, the brand, where you have to build it yourself. With PR, you are building your credibility and building your reputation through the media by building relationships with different media outlets all across the world who endorse you, they support you. And it's a way to build credibility and build your reputation because, you know, you're not paying them. They're not related to you. They choose to support you because they love your project, they love your story, and they think their audiences will love it too. So that's when you get in touch with them, they go, this is a great story. Let me interview you or let me review your book. I think my audience would love to learn more about your experiences. I think they'd love to learn more about your book. So it's a great way to build that unbiased third-party credibility because they are a separate entity from you. They are an outsider that you're not connected to, you're not paying them, you're not related to them, who want to come in and support you.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Interesting.
So I have a habit of interjecting additional questions that were on the itinerary. So one question I have, how would you go about building those relationships?
It really starts, sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh, no. So how would you go about building those relationships and finding those media outlets that you referred to?
Essentially, PR is, and I just shared this last week on my profile, the 4 cornerstones, the 4 principles of PR are mindset, positioning, diversification, and consistency. So it really starts with what your mindset is, really digging into what your core beliefs and attitudes and subconscious thoughts are about your brand, about yourself as an author, about your books. Because I work with a lot of authors and I've talked to a lot of authors who come up against a lot of mindset blocks, things like, no one wants to hear my story, it's not unique, I don't have a large enough platform to qualify for PR. So it's really about digging into what your mindset blocks are, some of the myths that you believe, and then once you get past that, once you push past that fear and you're like, okay, I'm ready to figure out what my goals are for this project and how I want to go about reaching said goals 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road, if I want to, for example, do more author signings, if I want to increase sales, if I want to get into more conferences, building up those goals. And then learning around your goals, how to position yourself. That's the other big thing in PR, because in order to get in touch with the right people, you have to know how you want to present yourself to them. So I say this all the time. I've said this in workshops I've done. I've said this in other interviews that I've done. And that is that what you do as an author is not unique. Why? Because there are thousands of authors who write in the same genre that you do. What will make you stand out is figuring out how to position yourself within that genre. Why do you do what you do? And how do you do it? Because as writers yourselves, I'm sure you know, there are a lot of similar frameworks surrounding how you draft a story, how you revise a story, how you do research. But why you do it and how you do it is unique to you. And that is a really key part of your positioning. I'll give you an example. I'm currently working with an author right now who's a sci-fi author. Her main character is a sober character because she is sober herself. She's been dealing with her own sobriety for a number of years. And that is unique to her own story. And that is also unique to her characters and how she chooses to write those characters. That is a great way to position yourself, because that is unique to your own knowledge, your experiences, and it really builds into your creative process. So in order to figure out who are the right people you should be reaching out to for this media exposure, you first have to figure out what your mindset is, you know, what you believe about yourself and your projects, and then figure out how you want to position yourself. Once you know that, then you're able to move into the diversification phase, which is, okay, I know who I am and what I stand for as an author. I know how I want my story to be positioned in the media. Now it's about figuring out, where are these people congregating? Like, when you're doing research, you break it down into smaller pieces, right? I always tell people, if you have no prior media exposure, you have no PR experience, the easiest way to make it more manageable and less intimidating is to break that research down into bite-sized chunks. So whatever your genre is, sci-fi, romance, horror, start with that. Start with, and don't just, you know, pigeonhole yourself to like, I'm only going to touch base with podcasts. Start small and then expand. Because the more experience you get, if you start pitching podcasts, the more comfortable you're going to get, the more experience you're going to have with, oh, this is what these guys are looking for from authors. If I want to reach out to them to get coverage for my book, then the more that can help you grow, the more you learn, and the more you can build up to, I'm going to touch base with my local radio stations because I know they've supported authors. And then go global and go, this is a great online network that I know has supported authors of various genres that I know, you know, I can feel comfortable reaching out to because I have all of this other experience that I've built out to. Like, the key to this is really breaking it down in every single level to bite-sized pieces, right? And working through it on your own speed. There's nothing that says when you're doing this research that you have to add 100 contacts per day. Or when you're doing this outreach, you have to reach out to 100 people per day. Start small, go slow, maybe do 5 a day. And if you feel good about it, keep going, right? And the last portion I wanted to touch upon in terms of the principles is just consistency. Because the other problem I see, and I've heard from authors who have worked with PR firms previously, they'll do the interview and they don't see any results from it. So my immediate question with that is, did you promote it? Did the publicist promote it? Did the media outlet promote it? If the answer is no, then what you've done instead of building a strategy is waste your time. Because if no one knows that you've done it, you're essentially worse off than never doing it at all. So staying consistent about promoting the opportunities that you've done, promoting the opportunities that you have coming up, and really looking at doing that outreach, building those relationships, making an effort to do your research into who's out there, who else have they talked to in my genre, what sort of topics can I speak to that would be interesting for them to hear about is really, really key to building a successful strategy.
Great advice. So I don't know, I mean, you definitely laid into a lot of details about what PR is, but for authors who are going into 2022, and let's say they have no experience, like this is the first time they may have even heard about it, can you give them like almost like a 3-step or like the 5 tips that you would recommend? Like, I know you said to start with like your genre and like your voice, what's your truth in it, and finding out what makes it unique to you, but can you kind of give like a step-by-step, like how they would get started going into 2022?
It comes down to, I say, working backwards, and you can do this whether you have a launch date for your book or not. Because I know for most authors, typically, because you're so focused on the writing and revising and making sure that you have the visual aspects ready to go, you're not really thinking about a marketing strategy until you get closer to the release. So even if you don't have a set date in mind, like July 20th, let's say, if you have an idea of like, oh, I want to release this in the summer, then you work backwards and look at, what do I want to do? Like, goal setting is probably number one. And when I say goal setting, I don't just mean I want to sell my books. Go a little deeper than that and ask yourself, like, in 3 months after, like, say I do release it on July 20th, from July to October, what do I want that to look like? You know, do I want to do author signings? Do I want to do live Q&As? Do I want to do giveaways? Do I want to have conversations like this with other authors about my process? What am I willing to do? What am I wanting to do more research, you know, actually look into helping me achieve my goals of, say, I want to sell 20 books in 3 months, right? So first step, I think, really is spending some time getting specific about what you want your goals to be, because that's the only way to build a strategy, to build a plan, is to get specific. The more vague you are, the more that's not going to help you actually come up with methods of reaching those goals, because you don't even know where you're going. So step number one is getting more specific with your goals about, if I have an idea of even what season of the year I'm going to release my book, what do I want that to look like? 3 months to 6 months to a year out. And once you have some ideas around that, start looking into, like, positioning is the next step, where you start looking into your research. Looking into what other genre authors in your genre have done is also another great way to get ideas of what might work for you and where you might be willing to step out of your comfort zone. Because as I said, I work with a lot of authors who get intimidated by this because they think that there's too much going on, there's too much to plan, and B, they feel like they don't have the audience to support building a strategy. And my belief, I've been doing PR for nearly 10 years. I've been working on my own in marketing and communications for nearly 15. And I can tell you right now that there is no set criteria that an author has to make in order to qualify for PR. Anybody can make it work, no matter how big your audience is. The key is getting clear on your goals, knowing how you want to position yourself. And I know this is uncomfortable for a lot of people, because they come at it with, I would like to have my book speak on its own merits. Why does it have to be about me? Why can't I just focus on the content of my book and have that be it. And my thing is that the problem with that is because the landscape is so competitive. There's so many people writing similar stories. What's going to make you stand out is why you wrote that story, what your motivation is, what your inspiration is, how you chose to write it, and what is it that you want people to get out of it. So really figuring that out when you're and you can start thinking about this at any time. This is not something that I recommend people do if they're 2 weeks out from a launch, because you need that time to really think about, where am I going? Where do I want to go with this? And how do I want to go about getting there? The authors that I talk to, the people that get the most out of working with me as a PR coach, where I provide them this guidance and the resources in order to learn how to build their own strategy, are people who have an idea of what their goals are, and they have an idea of where they want to go in order to achieve said goals, but they're having some trouble connecting the two. So when I sit down and I talk with them and figure out where they are currently and where they want to go, it's really about helping them brainstorm to get past those blocks. Like if you're thinking about, hey, I want to do an author signing, but I'm scared to reach out to bookstores, or I'm scared to reach out to these other areas. I sit down with them and go, okay, you want to do this. What is it about it that scares you? Where is the block? Where is, like, what's preventing you from doing that outreach, from making those connections? And so the people that come to me when they have specific issues like that they need help working through, and also if they want just some ideas on, how do I go about building a strategy right now? And I said, if you have no experience, it comes down to figuring out your goals, and it comes down to figuring out your positioning. Once you have those two things, you can take your time with the rest of it. No one, because here's the other part, is when you have those things solidified, no one can take it away from you. No one else is putting together this timeline for you, right? You have the ability to go, I want to take my time with this. I want to take 3 months with this. I want to take 6 months with this. No one is putting a self-imposed deadline on you saying you have to figure out these things quickly. But I will say that the earlier you start thinking about them, the more time and the more space you give yourself to do that research and to figure these things out. Because with PR, it takes time, and I always recommend that people give themselves that grace. You know, give yourself that time to really do that research, to really think about where you're going and who you want to be and how you want to be seen in the media, because it really does take that time.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's really, really good advice. Does anyone have any questions for Lilian so far? No? Brooke, do you have any last questions for Lilian?
Yeah, we have a few more. So
Okay.
use PR as writers to persuade a reader to buy a book, or to build trust with the reader.
Yeah, that is essentially it, in the sense that, because going back to when I was talking about the definition of PR, all the other forms of marketing that you do are coming from you. It's coming directly from the horse's mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Where the power from PR comes from is that it is an endorsement, a credible endorsement from an outlet that your target audience will pay attention to. And that's why I say it's so important to start off with genre media, because if you're writing a romance novel, if you're writing a sci-fi fantasy book, you know that the people that follow that reviewer, that podcast, whatever outlet it is, they are the ones that will be interested in your book, right? And I think the other misnomer I want to address here, because I've seen it a lot with authors and other entrepreneurs, is that there is this perception that going directly after mainstream media will help you reach the largest audience. Like, I've had people come to me and go, I want to be featured on the BBC. I want to do the talk show circuit in the US. And so my first question to them is, do you have a strategy and a plan built, and do you have media experience? Because if the answer to that is no, then it's pretty rare that mainstream media is going to pay attention to you right away. Because what they want is to see somebody who has that proven track record and that media experience. And to be honest, if you have no experience, you don't want to be working out your growing pains on national television, you know, and not feeling comfortable with interviews on national television. On top of that, when you pitch to mainstream media, they might have thousands watching their TV show, listening to the radio, reading, you know, the print publication. However, because it's generalized and it's generic, that doesn't mean that they're in your target audience. When you have no experience, you are much better served going after a genre podcast that might have a couple hundred people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually listening to it. However, they are listening to it because they're interested in your genre. So already, to use a marketing term, that audience, they are full of warm leads instead of the stone cold ones you would get from mainstream media. So I wanted to address that because that's something that I've had come up a lot over the years, where people seem to think that approaching mainstream media is a guarantee that you're going to get so many people paying attention to you, when it's not a done deal that they're even interested in your genre or in your book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you what advice, like, if authors don't pursue PR, how is that going to negatively affect their book, their career, and like what mistakes do you see authors making with PR?
I'll address the mistakes part first, Carly, and that is that a lot of times I see people give up too soon. And when I say give up too soon, it's things like they'll pitch 5 people and get discouraged that they don't get a response.
Mm-hmm.
My advice there is that PR is very much about the long game, and it's very much about patience. It is not an overnight thing to build your reputation as an author. It is not an, like, if you know that it's not an overnight thing to write your book, obviously, it is not an overnight thing to build a marketing strategy that's going to position you as a well-known genre author. And the reason why I say this is, without PR, that doesn't mean that you can't sell books, right? That doesn't mean that you can't build an engaged audience of newsletter subscribers who are loyal to you and to your projects. But what PR can do for you is help you build your reputation on an international stage. Mm. Like, you think about being a New York Times bestseller still has so much clout in the industry because it's been able to be built up that way. And that is the upper echelon of media exposure that helps you really grow your reputation, that you can't just get on overnight if you don't have experience. It's about working your way up incrementally to get those experiences. So many of these best-selling authors are able to do workshops, lead conferences, build their own business brands around writing and their creative process, and also around their books, because they've built it up incrementally. Not doing PR doesn't mean that you will never sell a book. That's not the point here. Not doing PR means that what you're doing is curtailing your ability to grow, curtailing your ability to really find international success, because only X amount of people know who you are and what you're about. Building PR into your strategy allows you to reach international audiences, build relationships with media all around the world, and gives you more opportunities to really grow in terms of business development. So any authors that could be listening to this, or watching this rather, who want to go after more festivals, more workshop opportunities, more, author signings. One of the first things these types of opportunities look for is, how many books do you have published, and what experience do you have speaking on that level, speaking on that stage, talking to audiences all around the world. And if that's not what you want, then all right, fine. You can build a marketing strategy that's focused just on your website, just on your social media, and just on email. There's nothing wrong with that. But for people who want to grow and who want to build those key relationships all around the world, PR is the only way to do it. You don't build trust and credibility always tooting your own horn, always saying, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. What you need is notable, credible, and higher profile people in the industry and in your genre to do it for you. And the only way to do that is to build a PR strategy.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more with that. I see too many people on social media saying, buy my book, like, here's a picture of my book, here's my character, like, buy my book, and it doesn't make you really want to buy it, because what like, how do I know that it's good?
No.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong, I understand having that patience, taking the time to build the strategy, because again, it's not an overnight thing. But if you want to build relationships, if you want to attract attention, if you want to engage more people in an authentic way that's not just about sales and promotion, building those relationships and networking is the best way to do that. Mm-hmm. Because once you have those relationships, you can always go back to that. Like for me personally, I have an international network of media that I can touch base with all the time on behalf of my clients and go, hey, hey, so-and-so, I've got this great project that's like horror related. Are you interested in reviewing it? And I'm able to do that because we have a relationship that we've built up over years to, where we not only touch base with each other if we have things for them to cover, but we talk all the time. We engage with each other. We have fun with each other. It's all about building these authentic relationships that can help you leverage your projects to the next level. Because the media, they're always looking for great stories. They're always looking for great content. The key is for you to figure out how to position it so that they'll want to take notice. And that comes with getting comfortable with it, and it comes with a lot more practice. And in order to practice, you have to give yourself time to do that.
What advice do you have for authors building that trust with networking and with their readers?
I would say you don't have to give away the farm, right? Don't give them the ending of the book, by all means, but don't be afraid to be authentic and to be genuine. You know, talk a little bit about, because the other part of it too that you want to avoid is mispositioning. What you don't want to do is position your books in such a way that reviewers come in, readers come in and think that it's a bait and switch. You know, they read the synopsis and they expect one thing only to get something else. That's going to affect your reviews, it's going to impact your sales, and it's going to impact also the types of opportunities you'll get moving forward. So be authentic about, you know, why you write, how you write, some of the themes you've put in there. Because these are all things too that are prime interview subjects. Whenever you get an interview that's about your book and about your project, they're going to want to know, you know, the fact that you have a character in there who's experienced abuse. They're going to want to know, why did you put that in there? What's the backstory? For my client who is, you know, sober, she's very, very open about her own battle with alcoholism and sobriety and why she decided to put a sober character in her books, right? So it's I know it's about getting out of your comfort zone, and a lot of folks feel really self-conscious about sharing so much of that. And my advice there is that you've already come so far in being willing to share this part of yourself in your books and in your characters. Don't be afraid to give voice to that, to actually talk about it, because these are things that people actually want to know more about. Don't feel like you are giving somebody ammunition to attack you or something if you share these parts of, this is why I created this character, this is why I chose to put this as a theme in my book. People are looking for that authenticity. People are looking for something to build that connection with when it comes to you, because when you buy a book and when you read a book, it's not just about enjoying what's in between the two covers. You know, it's about, I think anyway, for me as a reader and for me as someone working in publicity, it's about building that genuine story and sharing your genuine story too, because as I've said before, so many people out there write amazing stories. What gives those stories more power is you as a person, your experiences, your insights, your knowledge, your processes, your inspirations. And that's really what makes it unique, and that's what people latch onto. And I know that there is a lot of fear surrounding sharing that. I know there is a lot of self-consciousness. I know there's a lot of doubt around sharing that. But what I've seen, at least within the author community, is that so many of you have already been so good about sharing that within your own social media communities that you build, communities that you attract to you. PR is the same thing. You're just reaching out, instead of to your own social media community, you're just reaching out to the media. And it's really not that much different. A community is a community. It's just that there's more people when you reach out to the media.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So if there is one gold nugget that you can leave with our viewers, what would you want them to remember and take away?
That's a good question, Brooke. I would say that just remembering that if you take away anything to do with PR is about building relationships and connections and community the same way you've been doing on social media and through your newsletters. If there's anything that you take away from that, those core values and what you use to build your social media relationships, you can take with you into building a PR strategy. It is the exact same philosophy. The only difference is instead of putting out a piece of social media content and attracting an audience to that, you're sending an email to a media outlet and going, hey, I found you on this. I would love to talk to you about my book. Can we schedule a time to just chat about it? That's all it is. That's really the main defining line.
I think that's great. Yeah. And I can even testify to that. I think the community and networking and being with the writing community, the author community has been the best advice I've heard too, for sure. Getting involved helps, immensely. You really can't do it without that support group.
Yeah. And
really cool.
And for people starting small, there's a lot of authors out there that have their own blogs, that have their own podcasts. You want to get comfortable talking about all of this? Start with the other authors in your actual community, because a lot of them, just like you guys, are willing to sit down and talk with other authors, and then it takes the pressure off. You're still getting out there, but when you're starting out, it helps to take the pressure off, and that's how you get comfortable.
Yeah. That's great. Well, perfect. Lilian, do you have any last things you want to leave with our viewers today? We covered so much. There's so much good info in here.
Just that if you ever need me or anyone has any questions, you can always reach me on Instagram at Lilian Sue, copywriter PR. I'm on there 5 days a week, sharing actionable tips and strategies, dealing with mindset, dealing with tools and other resources. So any questions anybody has, my door is always open.
Perfect. And your website is perfectwritingservices.com. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, this was such a pleasure to chat with you today. Thank you, Lilian, for doing this with us.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Anytime.
Yeah.
Okay, well, have a good rest of your weekend. Thanks everyone for joining.
Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.